Down a dirt road under endless stretches of sky, the small desert community of Lucin, Utah stands still. 100 years ago, it was a railroad and mining town, but by the 1930s, there was nothing but tumbleweeds left behind. It was a ghost town, a backdrop for a B-grade horror movie. Some families moved back in the 1990s, children who grew up and wanted to reclaim their hometown. But with no signs of civilization for at least 30 miles, they packed their bags and left. Then, in 2022, when most boys go off to college, Dylan Rounds bought a plot of land to try his hand at farming grain. Just before his first harvest, he mysteriously disappeared. Someone is responsible for snatching Dylan from his farm. But who? Here's what we know. Welcome to True Crime Recaps. I'm Chris, bringing you all the crime in half the time. If you've only got a few minutes to get caught up, you're in the right place. And if you like what you hear, it would mean a lot to us if you would tap that like button and subscribe so you never miss a recap. Life on a farm is generally considered to be a peaceful experience. But when 19-year-old Dylan Rounds disappeared off his land, the tranquility evaporated in an instant. He was no ordinary teenager. He could drive a tractor before other kids his age could ride a bike. He didn't chase after girls or spend all his free time playing video games. He earned money growing pumpkins and sweet corn to sell to his neighbors. All he wanted to do was work alongside his dad and grandpa out on the farm. And after high school, he bought a small farm of his own near Lucin, Utah, a teeny town close to the Nevada border, about 3 hours northwest of Salt Lake City. He lived alone in a small camper and kept a pistol and shotgun on hand for protection. When he needed to socialize, he'd drive 30 miles west in his 2015 Ford F-150 to Montello, Nevada to meet friends for dinner. But no one came out his way, out in the middle of nowhere. Well, almost no one. On Wednesday, May 25th, 2022, Dylan told several family members about a strange encounter he had with a strange man on a gravel road near his farm. According to his aunt, Dylan spotted the man walking barefoot out of the desert. He flagged Dylan down and asked to use his phone. The teenage farmer could tell something was off. The man was acting strangely, and Dylan wouldn't be surprised if he was high. Then, the man asked for a ride. The next night, Dylan ate dinner with friends in Montello. That was the last time they saw him alive. On Saturday the 28th, around 7 a.m., Dylan spoke with his grandmother on the phone. Like any farming family, they talked a lot about the weather. Rain or lack of rain can be the difference between a good crop or a ruined one. That weekend, there was a storm coming, so Dylan's first priority was getting his grain truck full of seed under shelter. His neighbor let him use an old shed on his property for things like this. It was about 5 miles away from his camper, so he hung up with Grandma, telling her he needed to hustle over there since it was already starting to rain. Then, he disappeared. The weekend came and went. Dylan's father, Justin, and his sister had driven out to Las Vegas on Thursday. They were on their way back on Monday the 30th when one of Dylan's friends called. He said nobody had heard from Dylan in a few days and he wasn't answering his phone. In a June interview with East Idaho News, Dylan's mother, Candace, explained what happened next. She and Justin drove out to Lucin expecting to find their son on the ground with a broken leg or a snake bite somewhere in the 5 miles between the shed and his camper. But he was nowhere to be seen, and the farm was deserted when they arrived. Nothing seemed out of place, nothing seemed suspicious. His F-150 was parked in front of the camper, and the grain truck was safely in the shed where he'd left it. The only things missing were Dylan, his phone, and his wallet. His parents called the Box Elder County Sheriff's Department, and investigators arrived on the scene. Among them was Chief Deputy Cade Palmer, who'd soon become a thorn in Candace's side for the next several months. About 90 minutes into the investigation, they found Dylan's work boots behind a pile of dirt about 100 yards away from the shed where he parked his grain truck. According to his parents, Dylan was a creature of habit. He'd wear a pair of boots until the soles fell off. Then he'd throw them out and buy the exact same kind. Those boots were still in good condition. There was no reason for him to throw them out. Furthermore, the dirt pile was in the opposite direction of his camper. Why would he walk 100 yards out to ditch his boots before walking 5 miles back home? Upon closer examination, sheriff's deputies found blood on Dylan's boots. Things got stranger as they inspected Dylan's F-150 pickup truck. Someone had pressure washed it. The thing was squeaky clean except for some mud in the wheel wells, as if someone stepped in mud, then drove the truck. Oddly, no tire tracks were leading to or from the pickup. Now, it was raining that weekend in Lucin, so if he drove the truck anywhere, wouldn't it leave noticeable tracks? Candace climbed into the cab to look around and noticed something strange after sitting in the driver's seat. She could reach the pedals. Candace is 4'11". Her son is a foot taller. She could never reach the pedals whenever she'd get in Dylan's truck. Did someone scoot the seat up? Perhaps the last person to drive the truck? There was another trait about Dylan's truck that everyone in the family knew about. The four-wheel drive didn't work. He'd recently got a new transmission transfer case, which for some reason prevented him from putting the truck in four-wheel drive. He complained about it constantly, as any farmer knows how difficult the terrain can get out there. But when they found the truck, the four-wheel drive was engaged. They searched his camper next, looking for his guns. The shotgun turned up at a friend's house where Dylan would often crash. They also knew he liked to keep his pistol in the bathroom. They searched high and low, but all they found was the empty case. Dogs, horses, drones, and helicopters searched through the night, but there was no sign of Dylan. The family posted a reward for any information, but nothing valuable came in. Misinformation about the case spread like wildfire. Rumors that Dylan took his own life, was in an abusive relationship, or simply ran off. Anybody who knows Dylan will tell you the same thing. That's just not true. Something happened on that farm between Saturday the 28th and Monday the 30th. Who, where, and why were the questions on everyone's mind. After the first search, Dylan's half-brother and a friend arrived at the camper to help look. Maybe everyone else missed something. Maybe they'd find something of use. When they walked in, they found Dylan's pistol sitting out in the open with the clip out. You'd have to be blind to miss it, so either everyone who searched the trailer, including the sheriff's department, needed to get their eyes checked, or someone snuck back in and planted the gun. Then, things got even weirder. Dylan's truck key fob was still missing several days into the investigation. The day after the magic gun turned up, the key fob appeared in the same location. Sadly, both items had been wiped clean of fingerprints. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and there was still no sign of Dylan. Candace called for the Box Elder County Sheriff's Department to remove themselves from the investigation. She and Justin believed they botched it from day one, and it all boils down to a drifter living near Dylan's shed that might know what happened. James Brenner is a 58-year-old convicted felon who was squatting in a trailer on Dylan's neighbor's property, and his trailer was very close to the shed where Dylan parked his grain truck that last weekend. James had done some work on Dylan's farm in the past, but that was the extent of their relationship as far as his family was concerned. But James doesn't have a squeaky clean past. His criminal history includes malicious wounding, malicious shooting, and 3 separate charges for felony possession of a firearm. It was about to become 4. You see, James likes his guns. In the days following Dylan's disappearance, a neighbor, identified in court documents as DH, says James tried to pawn several firearms off on him. Among them were 3 black powder guns and a .22 caliber rifle with a scratched off serial number. When they asked DH why James gave him the guns, he said James was doing it for his own safety. The last time he was in trouble with the law, they took everything from him. Box Elder sheriffs interviewed James on June 7th regarding Dylan's disappearance. 9 days later, the FBI executed a search warrant on his trailer. Inside, they found plenty of firearm paraphernalia, including ball ammunition, ignition caps, black powder, and speed loads. Apparently, James thought he was about to fight in the Revolutionary War. Unfortunately, none of that tied him to Dylan's case, but that doesn't mean he wasn't a suspect. In fact, he was the only lead they had. Sheriff's deputies arrested James on weapons charges towards the end of June and officially named him a suspect in the first week of July. James began talking under pressure from the police. He claimed he hadn't seen Dylan in months, but found the teenager's boots near the shed. He took the boots back to his trailer where he decided Dylan wasn't coming back for them, so a month before the teen went missing, he claimed he left the boots out by the dirt pile. Candace calls BS on James's story. She says there wasn't a speck of dust or mud on those boots when they found them. If James's story was true, those boots would have been out in the weekend rainstorm, not to mention a month's worth of wear and tear in the elements. Given what we know about Dylan's meticulous routines, it's unlikely he just left his boots by the shed. Candace thinks James knew they were coming to look for Dylan, so he tried to hide the boots behind the dirt pile. Cell phone data also paints a picture of Dylan's movements after he called his grandma. The next and last call he ever made was to James Brenner. His phone pinged again near the shed and James's trailer, then again back at Dylan's camper. The final ping came from Lucin Pond, where police eventually found Dylan's cell phone. Unfortunately, there was nothing on it to help them solve his case. James allegedly told police that he stopped by the pond on his way to meet some friends for lunch. Candace lays the argument out pretty clearly to the East Idaho News, saying he placed himself at the pond the day Dylan disappeared, and Dylan's phone was found in the pond. As more information on James unfolded, Candace and Justin recalled even more suspicious activity. They remember seeing him moseying around the shed on June 2nd. First, he pulled the grain truck out and cleaned it. Then, he began hauling trash bags out of the shed. Candace counted 4. She, Justin, and sheriff's deputies watched him load a pickup truck full of trash and drive it off the property. Candace asked why the cops were just standing there. Here we have a man with a warrant for his arrest, a missing 19-year-old kid, and clear evidence of tampering. They simply said, "There's nothing we can do." But what was in those trash bags he was hauling away? Candace claims the shed was full of trash and empty beer cans after James left. It was always filthy. He didn't suddenly decide to clean it one day. She thinks he got rid of something. But what? After his arrest, James spoke with Justin over the phone. He maintained his innocence and swore he had nothing to do with Dylan's disappearance. Justin wasn't sure what to say. Does he press James for answers, or does he sympathize with him, hoping he'll say something else? During their talks, James pointed the finger at another man named Chase Venstra, a 41-year-old drifter with a long rap sheet, including domestic violence, stalking, and assault charges. In 2016, police in Clinton, Utah captured Chase after a 10-hour standoff. They were serving several warrants for his arrest, but Chase refused to leave his home peacefully. The SWAT team and K-9 units had other ideas, and they eventually dragged him out in handcuffs. 6 years later, Box Elder sheriffs believe Chase was the barefooted man Dylan saw walking out of the desert on May 25, 2022. He was spotted in Montello on the 26th, allegedly asking about Dylan. There were also reports that Chase got a ride back to Dylan's trailer that Saturday, but we can't speak to their accuracy. Candace remembers Dylan saying he didn't give the man a ride, but as of now, he's been cleared as a suspect. According to Justin's interview with East Idaho News, Chase was seen on camera in Snowville, Utah around 7 a.m. on Saturday, the day Dylan called his grandmother and the day police believe he went missing. It's about a 90-minute drive southwest from Snowville to Lucin, so it's unlikely Chase could have been involved when you compare Dylan's cell phone movements. Chase appeared on camera again later in the day, this time at a KFC back in Clinton. Justin wasn't getting anywhere with James, and he still wasn't sure how to play it. Then, Grandma took the phone and called James out on his BS. At that point, James said, "I can't talk to you anymore," and lawyered up. As of December 2022, Dylan Rounds is still missing. James Brenner is serving time for weapons charges dating back to 2021 and remains in custody on additional firearms charges from 2022. He has not been charged with any crimes regarding Dylan's disappearance. So, what happened to Dylan Rounds? That's the question on everyone's mind, and no one seems to have an answer. In the meantime, his family is doing their best to piece together what could have happened. One theory circles back to the shed. Apparently, James had gotten comfortable squatting on the property, so comfortable that he put a lock on a gate between Dylan's land and his. The lock wasn't anything too secure, and the gate was mostly wire rigged up between two fence posts. But if Dylan needed the gate open to drive his grain truck over to the shed, that might explain his call to James that morning. Did he want to keep Dylan out of that shed for some reason? One thing is for certain. Someone knows more about Dylan's disappearance than they're letting on. If you have any information about what happened to Dylan Rounds, please contact the police immediately. And that's your recap.
Thanks for hanging out with us today.
If you like getting all the crime in half the time, go ahead and tap that subscribe button and the bell so you never miss a story.
We're here Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, but don't go away. Catch up on more recaps right here, right now.
Until next time, take care.